friends, it's RSKT, and welcome back to another episode of the A Modular video library, a series that takes a look at the wide range of modules available for the A Modular system. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at the 2 LFO module over here. We'll do a general overview and then dive into some demo patches I've made using it. Before we begin, A Modular is a small but ever-growing system, so if you find this video useful, be sure to like the video and subscribe if you haven't already, or consider supporting me on Patreon. The videos for this series can be found in a playlist on my channel and can be viewed in any order. Green thumbnails are used for official tangible wave modules, and pink thumbnails are used to cover third-party modules. With that said, let's now take a look at 2 LFO. So just like it says on the tin, the 2 LFO module comes with 2 LFOs. However, they are not the same. Both LFOs behave slightly differently. LFOs, as I'm sure a lot of you know, are super useful for modulating various parameters like filter cutoffs or envelopes, just pretty much anything. You can use them for clocks. So it goes without saying that this is probably one of the most useful things that you can have in your system. So looking at the inputs up here, we have 2 sync inputs, which is really useful for resetting the LFO's waveform when a trigger pulse is received. We've also got a pulse width modulation input, but you'll see there's a number 2 next to it, and that means that it's only available on LFO 2. In terms of outputs, we've got several different wave shapes available to us. So we've got square waves, we've got a triangle or sawtooth wave, we've got another lot of square waves, and then we've got a triangle and a sawtooth wave down here. But you'll notice the icons are slightly different for them. We'll be going over what that means in a second, but also take notice that there are little white lines next to each of these icons showing which outputs correlate to those symbols. So that way you're actually getting 2 outputs for each of these. So in terms of controls, we've got 2 knobs per LFO, and we've got these little switches here. Before we have a look at like the knobs and how the shapes work, if I switch this switch from fast to slow, so right now we can see this LFO is blinking, we can slow it way down, and now it is extremely slow. We might not even see this light fade for quite some time yet. So I'll just give this a twist and push this up. And there you go. So we can slow this and make like really slow sort of modulations. Oh yeah, we can switch to fast and turn it up even higher. The same goes for this one down here. However, there is one more switch down here, which lets us switch between using a triangle wave or a sawtooth wave. Now I have the scope script loaded up on the EuroPie down here. So what I'm going to do is just take the square wave output of this top LFO and we'll plug it into the digital input. So we can see that we're getting a nice square wave here. We can toggle this down. And you might actually notice that if we twist this knob here, these squares get a little bit closer or a little bit further apart. It's not exactly pulse width, it's kind of just altering the speed of the square wave, but that can be really useful if you just want to do some sort of slight variation or more of like a fine-tune control without actually touching this knob up here. If we turn this up really, really fast, we can see that we pretty much get into audio rate territory, which is really cool. Now, just before I do the triangle to sawtooth wave, I'm just going to switch this to the analog input. The only reason I got this plugged into digitalism at the moment is because it just displays square waves a little bit better. So we'll switch to analog. We'll switch this to the triangle sawtooth. And there we go. So we can see that we're pretty much getting a triangle wave. I know that it's kind of clipping at the top of the screen here, but that's just the script. I can sort of lower this or make it higher. So we'll just kind of leave it like that for now. Now, if we turn this knob right to the center, there we go. We've pretty much got our perfect triangle wave. If we turn it slightly to the left, you'll notice that we get more of a sawtooth shape. Switch it to the right. We get a sort of flipped sawtooth shape. So that can be really, really cool for sort of blending between different types of modulation, which we'll get into in a second when we combine these with the logic module. Now, moving down to the second LFO here, we'll plug in the square wave, and I might just switch this back to the digital input. So we can see that this square wave is kind of shaped a little bit differently. That's because now we have this pulse width control down here. So if we open up the pulse width, we can sort of make the higher voltage last longer than the lower voltage, or we can turn it down and flip it. Don't want to go too far. Maybe something like that. And we can see that every time this bottom yellow light lights up, it's happening in conjunction with these little blips here. So that's just a good way to sort of understand what your pulse width control is doing without having to use a scope. Finally, I'll switch this back to the analog input, go down to our triangle wave. And you can see, yep, we've pretty much just got a triangle wave going on, but now we've got this tiny little switch down here. So we can just switch that and it switches to a sawtooth wave. Now it's a pretty sharp sawtooth wave in comparison to the first LFO, which is slightly sloped. You're not going to see the vertical lines represented here because that's just the way this scope works in nature. But yeah, now we've got a sawtooth wave. So what are some different things that we can use this for? Well, for starters, we could take the square wave output of our first LFO up here, and I'm just going to plug it into the clock input on our MIDI clock divider. And now we can see that we can divide the rate of this LFO to different steps, or different divisions, sorry. So yeah, obviously we can use this as a clock source. We could also plug this into the clock of the EuroPi, which is now moving very fast, and use that as a clock source as well. We can also take this and plug it into our mixer down here. Let's turn this up. We can actually hear the LFO if we turn it up really fast. It moves into audio rate, so we can actually use this as an oscillator if we wanted to. Of course, one really popular thing to do with an LFO like this, I might just switch to the triangle wave on the bottom one here, and we'll plug this into the CV input on our WASP filter. And we'll just take a square wave into the low pass input and take the output of that, plug it into our mixer. So right now, we just have the filter behaving normally, but this has a little attenuator built into it for the CV amount, so we can slowly increase this. And we can see that as this lights up, in conjunction with our LFO, we're getting some filter modulation. Pretty neat stuff. Something else that you might want to experiment with is, I'll just take the square wave out of the first LFO up here and plug it into the A input of the logic module. And we'll take another square wave from the bottom LFO. And these aren't synced in any way, but we can see that if we slow these down slightly, now we're getting some interesting sort of rhythms happening here. We might want to use that to trigger the gate of an envelope, and we'll just plug the, let's go the La module over here. I'll plug that into our WASP filter. We'll take the filter out and hook it up to a VCA. We'll take that envelope out and use that to open up the VCA. And maybe we'll take the VCA and plug it into a delay module. And then we'll take the output of that and plug it into our mixer. We'll just turn off the delay for now. So now we're getting these really cool, interesting rhythms happening with the logic module. We could also take that and like use AND or XOR. But maybe I'll just leave it here for now. Let's turn up the delay. Cool, so that's pretty neat. Why don't we take the triangle wave and we'll do some filter modulation with that. If that's a little fast, we can just turn it down. Cool, so now we've got like a little bit of a rhythmic pattern happening. If I were to just generate like a little bit of a random pitch sequence using the RBSS down here, and maybe we'll plug that into the frequency. It's probably going to sound pretty weird because it's not quantized. Maybe we could plug this into table instead. And now we just have a little bit more of variation happening. Let's slow these right down a little bit. And open up the envelope. Play around with the pulse width control to get some different sort of rhythms happening. Slow it down even more. And maybe we could take the same thing and plug it into the wave. Now I'm just kind of messing around at this point, but let's take the clock output of the RBSS. And maybe we could trigger some drums down here. Let's get a snare happening. I'm going to take a noise oscillator and plug it into a VCA up here. We'll trigger that VCA with a second envelope. And we'll use that same snare trigger to trigger the gate of the second envelope. Let's turn this down a little bit. And let's hook that back up into our mixer. Great. I think I'll I'll actually plug that into the B mixer down here. And now that just frees us up with one more spot, which I'll probably sequence some hi-hats with. Great. So yeah, I mean, I'll probably do my best to sort of cut that whole section up because I kind of got lost there for a little while. I definitely would love to do some side chaining with this, but I don't want to sort of spoil the VCA stuff I've got going on. Either way, you can see that we've used the LFOs at least to trigger a sort of interesting kind of rhythmic pattern. Now we can just change the pulse width. We can get kind of different things happening. Anyways, I hope that that's given you like a pretty good overview of what the 2 LFO module is capable of. Obviously things got a little bit messy here because I was just patching like crazy, but yeah, hit the like if you like, and if you don't, tell me why. Please subscribe, check me out on Patreon, and enjoy the upcoming demo patches. See you in the next one.